Welcome back to the Puckn Pod. On today's episode, we give our reaction to the NHL trade deadline, and then we discuss Major League Baseball spring training, and then we discuss our favorite TV show memories from children to adults. That's all coming up next right here on the Puckn Pod. Let's Puckn go. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Puckn Pod. My name is Joe.
My name is Brandon.
And I'm Paul.
Gentlemen, it's been one hell of a week, hasn't it? I mean, we had our live stream last week, and it went swimmingly, I thought.
Way better than I think we thought it was going to, because we were worried about the technical side of things, right? So
yeah,
I thought it was super successful.
Absolutely.
I think my biggest worry with that was whether we were going to have some significant silent gaps because we didn't know what to talk about, what to say. But I thought it went fluidly, and I thought our conversation was good. Certainly, including the comments from the stream was really good. I think, overall, I loved it, and I'm looking forward to future ones.
Yeah, we definitely have more that we're going to be doing in the future, so make sure you stay tuned for that. And of course, we were asked in the chat there from your brother Devin if we are going to do any video podcasts, and eventually that is the plan. I think pretty soon here we're going to start doing video podcasts, so stick around for that. You'll see us on YouTube more often as well, which I'm looking forward to. Before we get into today's topics, gentlemen, I just want to talk about one thing, and that's I'm getting older here. You know, my birthday is coming up. My birthday is actually Sunday, the day before this specific podcast goes to air. And I got my first birthday present today, and it was a very big surprise. I woke up, and my wife woke up early this morning because she's used to waking up early or staying up all night because she works graveyards in her job. She was up at 2:30 in the morning, just decided, I can't sleep anymore. I got a bunch of stuff I want to do. So she got up and did all those things. Well, she decided to surprise me. She washed my hat for me.
Nice.
It was the nicest surprise. This hat that I'm wearing, for the audience, of course, can't see it, but I made this hat. It's a Vancouver Island, kind of just Vancouver Island on a hat, and I'm very proud of it. I went to a store, bought the hat, and then I said, "Hey, I want you to embroider this for me," and that's exactly what they did. And I love it. It's an awesome hat. But it was really dirty. It was really stained from all the sweat from over the year or so that I've had the hat for. And she surprised me with a nice clean hat this morning. So I was very, very happy to see that, and I was very grateful. So that's my first birthday present.
Do you have one of the hat racks that you stick it in and put it in the washing machine?
No, so first thing she did, she told me all about it. She put it in the wash and just let it wash on. There's a mode called hand wash in the washing machine where it's pretty gentle, basically, right? But what it did was it cleaned the hat, but it didn't get rid of all the salt stains and stuff like that. So she sat there thinking about it, and she said the thing that kind of clued in was she realized that it sort of felt like grease to her. So she's like, "What gets out grease? Dawn dish soap."
Yeah, that was the first thing I was thinking of.
That's exactly what she did. She washed it in Dawn dish soap, got rid of all the salt stains on it, and the white part on the back of the hat, again, the audience can't see the hat, but it's sort of a white and black hat, and the white part was kind of yellow with all the sweat stains and stuff. It was pretty gross, but I love the hat.
I love his explanations here, guys.
I know. So she showed it to me this morning, and I was just blown away at how clean it looked.
And then
here I am wearing it now. I'm going to sweat in it tonight, and it'll be back to dirty all again tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And now all our viewers are going to listen to the Steve Dangle part.
Yeah, they're gross stuff.
Sweaty hats.
I just want to, for me, it's my way of shouting on my wife, Faye, for giving me an awesome birthday gift. And I'm really excited for, what's to come in the next year. 43 I'll be turning on Sunday.
If you're that pumped from a hat being washed, I am so stoked to find out next week what you get on Sunday.
Oh my God. This is the thing. I find as I get older, I get more and more excited for the silliest things.
Practical, right?
Practical things I don't have to do myself.
Yeah.
Like this, not having to wash this hat myself is the greatest gift I could get.
So you guys know pretty clearly that March for me kind of sucks, especially in my job. It's our year end, our fiscal year end, and basically we're inventory prepping all month for the 31st, which is one day where we have to do our entire building worth of inventory, as well as we're open for business as well, which makes it extremely difficult. However, Not a birthday gift, but kind of along those simple gift lines. Last year when I got home from my inventory, which was, I start work that morning at 5 a.m., and I didn't get home till about 20 after 8 at night that day. So long-ass day for sure. And I walked in and went into the kitchen, gave her a hug, gave her a kiss, and all of a sudden she shows me this basket of goodies that she's basically put together for me.
On.
There's like chips in there that I like, my spicy Takis that I love to get.
Oh, yeah, okay.
A couple bottles of Diet Pepsi, which is like my favorite drink, and there was a couple of chocolate bars in there I liked, and I think there was a gift card to the liquor store for some beer for the following day, because I had to work, whatever. I think it was a Thursday, so I had to work the next day, but the Friday, that card got used for sure. But, you're right, like those simple little gifts, like just coming home and seeing that, it was just like, man, it made my day, because it was such a long day, such a long month, really, right?
And it's unexpected. I think that's the other part of it. It's a surprise. So like for me, like waking up, my mindset is like, oh, I got to go to work, right? So I'm getting ready for work, and for her to like surprise me with that was really cool. It was a nice little treat.
When it comes to gifts, funny enough, like I got blessed with kind of two gifts around Christmas time. Obviously, I had a couple loved ones give me an awesome gift and getting a PS5.
That is cool for sure.
That was kind of fun, but honestly, it wasn't my favorite gift. The gift that I got from a former partner was just a wagon for being able to pull my clothes around.
That's cool. Oh yeah, right, because of your knee problem.
Yeah,
right.
Pull my clothes around and to kind of like do grocery shopping and stuff with. It's been so useful. So it's actually
awesome.
been my favorite gift so
Is
far.
it like one of those fold up ones?
Yeah.
My parents got one for like when they go down to the park in the summertime, and they carry their lawn chairs and their cooler full of snacks and made up sandwiches and stuff like that. And my mom, she's just, every time she talks to me, she's like, I can't wait to use my wagon again.
That's the best thing. It's always about the small things, right? And the gestures that
the little
that
things
get.
in life, right?
No, I'm definitely grateful for that. But hey, you know what else? What else I'm grateful for is that successful stream that we had on Friday. For us, it was a success because we were able to get through it, and we had pretty much zero problems. I mean, I can't think of any issues that we had technically anyway.
I was gonna say I drank too much coffee and had to pee about 17 times.
Yeah, we got up a few times, but that's okay. That's normal when you're doing a 5-hour stream, right? But gentlemen, we talked a lot about the trade deadline that day, so let's maybe talk about it and sort of go over some of the trades that happened during that day, because there was some surprises and maybe not so surprises too.
Not even just the trades themselves, but kind of the aftermath from those trades and the players involved, and now how it affects some of the teams involved too.
That's right.
There's a lot going on in the NHL right now, and it doesn't even have anything to do with the play on the ice.
That's right.
So,
yeah, a lot of teams got stronger, and a lot of teams kind of fizzled a little bit. I mean, when you consider what Boston did, for me, it felt like, okay, they're selling. They're obviously selling. They're getting rid of their players. But they ended up playing, I think it was the next day, if I remember correctly, and they won their first game after the trade deadline. So, I mean, they almost didn't lose a step, it felt like.
You can give coaching obviously a bit of merit.
Maybe
on that.
motivation on the player sides too. They want to put their best effort.
Considering some of the significant changes they made to their top 6 and top 4, right? Like it's a pretty big deal.
Mm-hmm. I think Sweeney, this is what I think. I have no inside information on this whatsoever, but I think it was almost like a last minute or last few day decision to pivot in that direction.
Yeah.
I think, we may get into it a little bit along the way. I have a couple things to say, but like contract negotiations with Brad Marchand stalled, right? He wanted a number. They were offering a number. It wasn't working. So he said, okay, well, yeah, go ahead and trade me if that's what you want to do, kind of thing. And then maybe we can renegotiate me coming back in the summer or something like that, right? And I think that might have been kind of a pivotal point for Sweeney, and then basically saying, you know what, okay, we got to go in a different direction. And then there were a few more players offloaded, right, including one to our team, the Leafs. So
yeah, Brandon Carlo was a big trade. I think there was excitement, I think, in that deal, but there was also a bit of disappointment in what they had to give up to get him. Carlo is a fantastic defensive player. Funny enough, I mentioned this during the live stream that the Leafs could have drafted him in his draft. They picked Travis Dermott before Brandon Carlo was picked.
That's right.
Yeah, that is right. I remember that, yeah. And the big thing that I've taken away, and some of the reaction that I've seen from some insiders and a couple of podcasts I've listened to, is that the players The players that have played with Brandon Carlo and some former teammates, former players that have played against him, have said kind of the same thing, and that's that he's not going to wow you with his speed. He's not that light of foot, so to speak, on the ice, but it's his reach. It's his ability to close the gaps. It's the routes he takes to the pucks. He's a frustrating player to play against because he has all these tools, and he's massive.
Yeah.
He's 6'5". He's got the wingspan of a condor, and he's 240 pounds. So he's not. And they were saying to kind of shy down your expectations as on his physical play. Like, he'll clear the front of the net, no problem.
Yeah,
and if business needs to be taken care of, he'll do that. But he's not going to go out of his way to finish his check. He's not going to go out of his way to, slam a guy into the boards if they're coming in on a forecheck.
He's not looking at being the hit leader.
That's right.
Yeah.
But he will do his job, which kind of, they said the reach and that gap closing was kind of the biggest thing that he makes him so frustrating to play against.
That's one of the things with Tyler Myers. I mean, I crap all over him a lot, but he is good at playing defensively when it comes down to, winning battles in the corners and using his stick to poke the puck away because he's got such a long reach, right? When you're that tall, if you're not going to use your body to throw hits, you should be at least using your body to box out or using your reach to get the puck away. There are certain aspects of that you need to utilize, and obviously Carlo knows what he's doing when it comes to that.
I think one of the, the concerns that was with what they had to give up, right? Originally, there was a lot of people thinking Minton was going to go on a deal for Lawton. Obviously, we know that it changed to being Grabenkin and a first for the Lawton deal. Minton probably will never be a second line center. Possibility he could obviously transform into that over time, but he's likely to be third line center. But we both talked about that, especially you had mentioned that he's a smart player, and certainly in the showings that he's had this year, he's looked NHL ready. So one of the benefits to the Bruins making this deal was they get an NHL ready prospect, and then they still get a future first out of it too. Now I understand where that's coming from because there's salary retention and there's 2 extra years on Carlo's deal, but it does seem like a lot to give up. I guess it's kind of one of those things you gotta see how it unfolds over time. Right now the Leafs have won the deal, but it could change.
I think the benefit, obviously, for the Leafs is that they're not getting a rental out of this deal because obviously that's a lot to give up for a rental player. You already know what he's capable of bringing you in terms of defensively and offensively too. But ultimately, you know what kind of player you're getting. The benefit being you have him for a couple more years, so you can build around that.
Absolutely.
In the off season and stuff like that.
I think the apprehensiveness from a lot of Leafs brass and Leafs Nation as fans was the fact that it's been a long time since, let's for example say Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews. Maybe Matthew Nyes is the exception to that, but it's been a long time since the Leafs have had any more than maybe one prospect or so that they feel is going to make an actual real impact in the NHL. Yeah. Minton was one of those players, but they still seem to think that he's basically, his ceiling is probably going to be what Scott Laughton is now.
Yeah.
The exception maybe a little bit more offensive ability. But as far as the way he positions and whatnot, it's kind of the same as Scott Laughton anyway. So it's an aggressive approach, trading that first, almost like a Tampa Bay type approach, where they're like, we don't want to win the Cup in 5 years when the first round pick's ready to go. We want to win it right now.
Yeah,
it's kind of the downside to being. It's sort of a catch-22. It's the downside to being a team like Toronto who is competing. Right, they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to have a chance to win the Stanley Cup. It's a downside to it because you have to give up futures and you have to give up good prospects to be able to make your team better now. So if things don't work out, that's the kind of the catch-22 part of it, where it's like if you don't make it out of the first round or the second round or whatever, then now you've got to look at what do we do to improve ourselves now in the offseason when you're limited to what you have to give away.
Well, and the compete obviously is going to play a part in that for the end of the year and then to the playoffs, right? Like Tampa made the move for Gord and Bjorkstrand, and then you obviously have the Panthers making the moves for Jones and Marchand. The Leafs had to respond. Right now, the benefit again, it's not rentals. It's this year, next year, and then Carlo goes the year after that. It's an unfortunate price to pay, but like I said, like you were saying, the Tampa Bay approach, it's just you want to win now, and you got to be able to compete. And these other teams made their team stronger, so you have to make your team stronger.
It's very true. Yeah, very true. I mean, that's the thing when it comes down to it. You're competing with teams like Tampa and Florida who are making themselves better, and also, of course, the Western teams too. Because if you end up making it all the way to the finals, you got to play somebody in the Western side of things, and a couple of teams made themselves better in the Western side of things too.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of questions. Paul, I'm going to direct it at you specifically because you're a Leafs fan. But Joe, I'd like to get your perspective too. The reason that I think you'll have one is because I think we can all attest to the fact that since we started doing this podcast, we've all paid a little bit more attention to each other's teams to kind of get a feel. So in a couple of points, Paul, I just want to get your sense of like a letter grade if you wanted to give the Leafs for their trade deadline, and just like a quick thought or two about how much they gave up, and do you think it was the right move?
I give them an A-. It wouldn't be an A+ just because of the amount of capital they had to give up, but I think they made their team better in regards to when you're looking at a paper. Like, we've seen a few games since the deal's been done, and the players have looked good. I think it's going to still take them a little time to gel into the team. Especially with Riley playing a Carlo. Unfortunately, Riley's just had kind of a pretty down year. He hasn't looked like Riley of the past, and he's a playoff performer. So we'll see how that goes once playoff rolls around. But A- based upon the type of players that they've acquired, and I think the impact that they will make on the team once they're comfortable with the team and Berube style. But giving up 2 firsts and 2 pretty high-end prospects. Again, not meant to be top 6 kind of players, but they are still very good character players. So it lowers the grade from kind of like A+ range, maybe down to like an A- range.
That's funny because I get, like, I see where you're coming from, and I tend to agree with you. The only difference being is that I'm taking the Leafs hat off, so to speak. Yeah. I'm not saying you're choosing this based on being a fan, but I think the fact that I am neutral, I look at it more like a B+ move. And because you're giving up 2 firsts, those 2 firsts could be really, really, really game changing for your team eventually. But I know at the same time what the Leafs are trying to do in terms of, they're trying to compete for the cup. So for me, it's more of a let's see how they finish the season. We could almost do another poll at the end of the season and see how we feel about those moves at this point. At the end of the season after everybody's out.
The nice thing about at least the 2 firsts that were given up in those trades is they are protected firsts. So yes. That is a benefit. That's why it would bring my grade up a little bit higher than that too. So
I'm kind of with you with the A-. Slightly different perspective. That was actually going to be one of my points, was the fact that they were top 10 protected, both of the picks. Was the Philadelphia one a top 13?
I believe it was top 12. And then
top 12, okay. Because I know the Carlo one was 10 for sure. 5. Oh, okay.
Top 5
I thought
protected.
it was, all right. I thought, okay, well, there you go. I thought it was 10, and I thought the other one was 12. Either way, I still got him at an A-. What I think the biggest takeaway, specifically in the Brandon Carlo trade, is the fact that they've got him this year and 2 more years after that. And
so they weren't rentals.
That will solidify their five defensemen are now under contract for 2.5 seasons.
Yes.
So, yes, they need a little depth to fill in that other spot, and they can always improve, of course. But they've got now 5 defensemen under contract, and that's who you got. Those are your guys. Let's roll with them. And I like that a lot. They haven't been in that position in a long time.
Yeah.
So, the Lawton deal, I think... I don't like where he's slotted as far as the players that are with him. Like the way the lineup's constructed right now, personally, I don't like it. I would switch it around a little bit, but for some reason right now they're really wanting to make that Domi, Lawton, McMahon line work, and I don't see it happening. I really don't. I would much prefer to see Domi on the second line left wing, to be honest with you, and have, say, Yarncroc on the right wing in Domi's spot, and have McMahon play the left. And so basically Lawton, Yarncroc, and McMahon, I think it should be the line. Just the way it's constructed, Yarncroc's better defensively. Lawton's good defensively. McMahon's that strong speed forechecker. I think that third line is going to be a lot more menacing than the way it's set up right now, because he's kind of a floater. He skates well, but he's always on the outside, always kind of at a public skate, so to speak. Like, I'm surprised he's not boogieing to the music that they play in between the whistles, you know what I mean? But that's why I think the Lawton trade is going to end up being better than, say, your B plus grade Joe. Just because I think eventually they're going to figure it out and he's going to fit right into that spot. Again, this year, playoffs, and next year.
I think a lot of neutral fans, like people who aren't Leaf fans, would agree with me that B plus is a fair grade. Only for the fact that, it's a wait and see kind of grade, right? Like totally. if they go deep into the playoffs, if they make it to the third round, then that's a great trade in my opinion. That I'd give them an A plus at that point, just for the fact that they're improving, period. And that's what any team wants to do, at the trade deadline. So, and they're not hampered, you know what I mean? Like they still have stuff they could do in the offseason to make themselves better if they need to.
Well, and there could be some big changes if we're still talking about the Leafs right now. There could be some major changes if Mitch Marner doesn't re-sign. If John Tavares doesn't want to take a large enough pay cut. There's going to be a lot of decent free agents available. Sam Bennett, I know, is one that I've talked about many times in the past. He hasn't resigned at all with Florida, so he's a player that I would love on the Leafs, and I think he'd be a good fit for Berube. You can look at Florida as well. Aaron Ekblad is a UFA as well. He just got suspended for 20 games for under the substance abuse policy. Who knows?
He would fit better in Edmonton then, based on that.
Yeah. Not knowing, I guess, what Florida thinks about that, maybe they choose not to resign him in the offseason. And then you were talking about possible upgrades to the defense still even in the offseason. That's still possibly even another option.
Yeah, it's funny when you think about, like, I think a lot of teams are kind of going through that possibility of losing players because of contract deals, things like that. Teams don't want to pay certain players for either term or, a high contract or AAV. Vancouver's a good example of that, right? With Brock Besser. I mean, we all thought Brock Besser was going to get traded at the trade deadline. In fact, there was speculation it was happening. There was speculation that talks were heating up, and I do believe that there was talks about it during the deadline, but the sort of news that's happening with the Canucks right now is that they're saying that the ask wasn't good enough, and I'll buy that. Sure, I'll buy that the ask wasn't good enough. Maybe they wanted at least a first round pick. Maybe that's all that was being offered was a first round. Maybe all that was being offered was a high second round pick. In the end, you do have to sort of play your cards close to the chest. And I think Vancouver, as upset as I was that Vancouver didn't do anything at the end of the day, they did make moves this season period, which is something they do. They always make their moves before the trade deadline, and they did do that when they traded JT Miller. They got Philip Hedl, they got Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor. Those are some good players that they did improve their depth and their defense. So in the end, I can't be too upset. It's tough because, a lot of players on Vancouver are slumping right now, and it would be nice to see those players come out of those slumps and actually have them play more cohesively and kind of come closer to what they were like last year in terms of a structured play. That's what Vancouver's missing right now.
It's like a complete recipe for disaster, the way everything seems to be falling in the wrong direction for Vancouver. At least that's what it seems like. Yeah. Because, I mean, the kind of the drama surrounding JT Miller and whatever that was, and then Elias Pettersson. Thank you.
Yeah.
Struggling offensively, and I mean, all around.
I mean, what's interesting about that, though, is that what people don't realize is he's actually on a 10-game point streak right now. He's got 7 goals in the last 10 games. So that what's happening is we as the Canuck fans are actually starting to see that turnaround. And I think a lot of it is mental, right? When you think about the game itself is a mental game, but you look at what he's going through and that it's in his head, right? Everything's in his head. If you shoot the puck, you get it at the perfect spot, but you hit the post, and then you just look up to the skies and you're just like, what do I have to do? And that's the mentality of it all. So yeah, it's, there are positive changes happening. The one thing I will say this about the way the team is playing right now, and I specifically mean the last few games, is they're collapsing defensively in really bad ways, and it's costing them goals every single time they do it. They find themselves having to come from behind. The last 3 games, they've had to come from behind. Yesterday's game against Calgary, they at least led first to start the game. They scored the first goal, and then they scored the 2-1 goal as well in the second period. But then Calgary scored 2 quick ones to make it 3-2. And you're just like, what? Like, this team, I just don't understand. So I'm screaming at my TV, and I'm finding myself getting more and more annoyed at the way this team is playing defensively. And this is not the same team that was there last year. And that's the thing that really annoys me. With a coach like Tocchet, you would think they'd be playing a much better defensive game, structure-wise.
So I guess that just does show that you do have to still have that certain level of talent, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, they did lose some in the offseason, and I mean, people aren't playing up to their capabilities so far. So you could almost argue that the Canucks trade deadline was like the end of January.
Yeah, in a sense. I mean, the way I look at it now is, now that I think about it, with all the new players that they have, I think of like Marcus Pettersson, for example. Plus, they've got all these new guys like, Elias Pettersson, the defenseman, and then Victor Mancini, who's also new as well. Very good player, by the way. Really, really, everyone's hyped about him right now. He had a really great game against Calgary yesterday. I don't know if you watched it, Paul.
I didn't get around to it. I had plans. So
had plans. All right,
didn't see the game.
That's okay. Victor Mancini's been playing really well for the Canucks as well. And you and I were talking about Elias Pettersson, the defenseman. Unfortunately, got cross-checked by, is it Zary?
Yeah, Connor Zary.
By Connor Zary. He got cross-checked in the back of the head after he hit, why do I suck at names? Kadri.
Yep, Nazem.
Yeah, so let me recapture the play for you just so we can kind of break it down. But basically, Elias Pettersson threw a clean hit on Kadri when he was carrying the puck into the Vancouver zone. It was actually Elias Pettersson, and then another player kind of threw a hit on him at the same time. But Pettersson basically got the bigger of the hit, knocking Kadri down. And I guess Zary thought it was a dirty hit, which it was totally clean when you watch the replay. But Zary basically retaliated by cross-checking him in the back of the head, to which he has been officially been suspended for 2 games after today. I think they had the hearing today. So anyway, so he's now out. Elias Pettersson's out. We're hoping it's not going to be for longer than maybe it's a day-to-day thing. Like, that's what we're really hoping for. Because we were talking, like, in our group chat, Mike and I were talking about how we think he's a really good player, and then Brandon asked me, like, how do you think he's a good player? He's got to have a -11 or something like that in his last 6 games. And I said, honestly, he's a rookie. The thing about it is the expectation for rookies is not going to be high. You're not expecting them to be goal-scoring machines, but he's a rookie. He's really good defensively. He throws his body around. Like, he never loses position when he does throw his body around. And he's a really good passer, and he's a really good shot as well. So he's definitely got all the tools, right? It's just a matter of making sure the person he's playing with also has the same tools and is able to not lose himself positionally, and that's the big thing.
Well, I guess it's gone from the Pettersson trifecta to Pettersson squared now, right? So,
well, we don't have 4 yet, but we're working on it. But yeah, no, I mean, with him, Mancini, Marcus Pettersson, there's a lot of new players on Vancouver, specifically on their defense, who are still trying to figure out the structure of the team. So the way I see it, I don't expect Vancouver to go far. If they make the playoffs at all, I don't expect them to go past the first round. If they do, that'll be a bonus. The way I look at it is this offseason will play a big part for those specific players in terms of learning a structure that Tocchet wants them to play. Tocchet still has to have a contract for next season as well, as far as I remember. I think this season's the last season. So we may not even have Rick Tocchet as a coach next year. We'll see. So there's a lot of stuff going on in Vancouver, but I think it'll be a positive offseason in the end. So we just paused the recording for a minute so Brandon can show me the replay of the play that happened with Connor Zary and Elias Pettersson. And you're right, it does look like it actually is an elbow. There was a sort of extreme slow motion movement from what I saw when I watched it live. They did show a replay of it, but it looked to me like he had sort of 2 hands up like this, but I couldn't see his left hand from the angle that they were showing to me. So I didn't notice that it was an elbow. And actually from that replay, you can clearly see it is an elbow.
It almost even looks like he's getting his butt end in there as well.
Yeah.
After he hits, is like the end of his stick's kind of sticking out a bit.
You got to wonder what
dangerous play.
What is he thinking there?
Well, I mean, I guess in a way you're trying to send a message for the hit that was previously laid on Kadri, which was a beauty, by the way.
It was a great hit.
That was awesome.
Perfectly clean hit.
I didn't realize how big he was.
Yeah, he's a physical guy. And that was the one thing when they drafted him, I remember as Canuck fans were all thinking, like, this is a joke. Elias Pettersson, another one? Like, what? Is this, like, you're throwing away a draft pick? But then we looked at the highlights of this guy and the way he plays, especially in Sweden. He was very physical. And we're like, wow, this is the complete opposite of Elias Pettersson, the goal scorer, right? So it's nice to see that he actually has an all-around good game. I mean, he's been in the NHL now since, I want to say December, maybe November, and he's never gone back to the AHL. Like, so he's played consistently in the NHL.
I look at obviously Connor Azari's reaction, and it's not uncommon, unfortunately, when you have your emotion that hyped to make bonehead decisions. Certainly, I look even there down in the United States. I've watched on YouTube. There was a track and field event in high school where there was a girl getting ahead of another girl in the track and field event, and I don't know if it was frustration or what it was. The girl had a baton in her hand and hit the other girl in the back of the head and gave her a skull fracture and a concussion, and went on the news afterwards saying, this is not the kind of person I am. And to an extent, I actually believe that. However, sometimes when you're overwhelmed with emotion and you're being competitive, you got all those hormones pushing you. Sometimes you just don't think about what you're doing, and then you have to face the consequences afterwards.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Is that not like assault?
Well, again, minor, right? So you can't be charged for something like that for assault,
Right.
but you can certainly still face consequences, especially in the public sphere, right? You're gonna, because it was publicized, you're gonna face consequences for it.
Holy.
I was going to joke and say, he's probably learning his tips and tricks from playing with Ryan Lomberg,
Or Nazem Kadri.
Well, yeah, really. But Ryan Lomberg, I find, is sort of he's kind of trying to be like Brad Marchand, the pest of the league, right? Because he was trying to pick a fight with Quinn Hughes last night. So, I don't know what you're going to do there, but
yeah, I mean, quite frankly, it's a standing joke, but it might be true. Like, I think Nazem Kadri has been suspended 20 games for Aaron Ekblad taking the PEDs, to be honest with you. Like, we said that for years in Toronto. Like, he's always getting suspended. But, so same question to you, Joe. What is your sort of letter grade and maybe 1 point on a summarization of the Canucks trade deadline?
And again, I have my Canucks hat on, so it's probably higher than you guys will give it, but I give them a B. And I only give them a B because, they did improve the team over, and again, trade deadline. I'm specifically talking about overall the trades that they made in the season before the deadline. But, obviously the only thing they really did deadline wise was they did get rid of, Carson Soucy's contract, which was like 3.5 or something like that million. So the big thing for them is they did alleviate some cap space, which is really nice. So overall, I think it's going to be an interesting offseason for them with the space that they have. I think they got like $13-14 million, which I'm pretty stoked about. Hopefully they can do something with that and actually get players. If they do lose Brock Besser, hopefully they can, recoup that with another player that's going to help the top six. I'll give them a B though, ultimately.
If I'm giving one for Vancouver, just because they didn't do anything on deadline day, probably be in the D range. Now it's only for the fact that they didn't get any value for Brock Besser and some of the other free agents at the end of the season that they could have gotten some value for. I understand the mentality of possibly trying to re-sign him and holding on to the player that much longer for that purpose, but you're out of the playoffs kind of at this point. There's no guarantee that these players are going to come back, unfortunately, at this point. So I think when you're kind of almost out of the playoffs at this point, it seems like something that should have been a sell mode for them, but it's my perspective on that.
I just think, sorry, I know you were probably going to say something, but I just feel like, okay, D is a little bit harsh in my opinion. And again, you have to understand one thing in particular, that everything that surrounded Brock Besser in terms of trade speculation was just that, speculation. We don't know necessarily that the team was even willing to trade Brock Besser. They might have just been putting it out there to see what kind of offers they were going to get. We don't know these things. So in terms of, yeah, we didn't get anything for Brock Besser. We don't even know that they wanted to trade Brock Besser.
Well, the only reason I didn't give them an F is because they were able to clear some of that cat space, right? So,
okay.
Given that, I know
but they did get better over the season. Yeah. And again, I talk about improving the D-core with players like Marcus Pettersson, improving their depth with Drew O'Connor and Philip Hedl as well. For me, I think yeah, you got rid of JT Miller, who was a heart and soul player, obviously playing well now in New York. But if he'd have stayed in Vancouver, who knows what kind of stuff would have happened if they'd have kept him there. So
yeah, I'm basing solely on the deadline, right? Like I understand the trades throughout the rest of the season. I definitely see the changes that's made.
It's tough because of course you look at Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin, and typically they don't make deals on deadline day. Yeah. So that's the thing that you have to consider there too.
My neck's starting to hurt a little bit trying to find out which one of you's coming over the table first. I'll put a bit of a positive spin on it. I'm going to go C+. And the reason I say that is not necessarily because they made deals, but maybe because they didn't.
Yeah.
Honestly.
They didn't lose any. They're not losing picks. They're not losing prospects.
Yeah. So I would say, a bit of a lead up to the deadline, if I can include that.
Yep.
With those trades for Shore. O'Connor, sorry.
Yeah, O'Connor.
I'm thinking Drew Shore.
Drew O'Connor, yeah.
But it's Drew O'Connor, yeah. So O'Connor, Marcus Pettersson, and there was a third...
Philip Hedl,
thank you.
From New York. And Victor Mancini, of course. But.
Right, from the Rangers.
Yeah.
So that, and then addition of the fact that they were able to offload the Soucy contract, which is terrible because he was a beast for them last year in the playoffs.
Yeah, he was having a weird year, man.
Yeah.
And it's what's funny about that is his first game he played for... who did they trade him to? Nashville? No. Rangers. First game he played for the Rangers, he scored a goal.
Yeah.
So, of course.
He scored a goal in his last game for the Canucks, too, so he's on a heater.
But, and then on the other side of things, give credits and kudos to maybe Patrick Allvin for saying, if Besser was on the table and the offer wasn't there, he said, well, the hell with it, I'm going to keep him. He's a good player.
Yeah.
Right? And then doing that, offloading a couple of contracts, being in a bit of a decline, if you want to say that, it'll now give opportunity to somebody like Lekaramaki to come up and start to develop and shine in the NHL.
He's with the big club as we speak.
That's right.
And Lekaramaki will be basically a replacement for Besser when you consider they're pretty much the same player. In fact, Lekaramaki's probably a better player than Besser for the fact that he skates better and he has better hands. So there's potential there. It's just, he's obviously 19, 20 years old, so he's got more room to grow. But at the same time, sorry, just one more thing. But at the same time, with Vancouver having the ability that they could, or with Vancouver having the potential of possibly losing Besser for nothing in the offseason, that's also going to offload another, $6-7 million for Vancouver to do something else with in the offseason. So.
Yeah. I was just going to say we've kind of beaten the Leafs and Canucks to death a little bit, but there are a couple of major other trades that happened, Paul. Why don't we talk a little bit about those? And I do want to talk about Mitch Marner when we're done a little bit specifically. I have an idea. I have an opinion, and I want to hear what you guys think about it. So.
Of course. Yeah, if we're looking at obviously the bubble teams for wild cards and stuff like that, and we're looking at contenders that made moves at the deadline. So I won't go over any deals that were done before deadline day. Like these will all be deadline day deals because we talked a lot about even trades, in the last podcast as well as on our live stream. Mm-hmm. Ottawa definitely made significant moves. It's hard to say with the Buffalo move with Ottawa getting Dylan Cousins and Dennis Gilbert and a second for Bernard Docker and Josh Norris, whether that was a better deal for one team than the other. I think Ottawa's got some value in getting a young player like Dylan Cousins and getting the second rounder out of it. But I actually think Buffalo got some really good offensive prowess out of both Bernard Docker and Norris out of that deal. So it's really hard to say one team did better than the other on that.
Norris scored again the other night too.
I know, it's so funny. I was upset about that trade because I really wanted Vancouver to trade for Norris, being that he's Quinn Hughes' best friend. We want to do whatever we can to keep Quinn Hughes on our team, obviously, but Norris has another 4 years of $7.95 million contract. That's a hefty contract when you think about it. But he's 25 years old, and obviously at that age, you're not fully peaked yet. You know what I mean? There's still more ceiling for him to go. He could be an incredible player for that contract, and he may even overvalue that contract in the end.
In the end, yeah, I would agree.
So that Gilbert that was traded from Buffalo, like, I think the Leafs have only played Buffalo twice this year. It hasn't been much. I think they play them at least 2 more times. But that Gilbert apparently is a pain in the ass. He is a mean SOB to play against.
Yeah.
And I mean, adding that to a couple of other players on Ottawa, they could be sneaky hard to play against, especially if they can make it into the playoffs.
Well, and you look at the other deal that Ottawa made, right? And that was the Zetterlund deal, where they didn't have to give up much besides maybe, there was Zach Ostapchuk was one of their prospects that he gave up, and he was considered a pretty tough player to play against in the minors, so he might have made an impact in the NHL. And then they actually gave up a second rounder and Noah Gregor to get Fabian Zetterlund, prospect Tristan Robbins, and a fourth. On that end of the deal, I'd say for sure Ottawa absolutely won that. Zetterlund has had a really good couple of years so far in San Jose, and so he'll probably fill in on a third line role for sure with Ottawa, and they've made themselves a tougher team with the acquisitions that they've made. Yeah,
I agree. I think they're definitely fighting for a playoff spot. I mean, I can see them in the playoffs. It all depends on who they get matched up with in the end. It's going to be a fun playoffs, boys. I really think that, regardless if Vancouver's in or not, I think it'll be really interesting to watch and see how these powerhouse teams do. Teams like Colorado and Dallas, who obviously tried to get better and significantly better. They spent a lot to get that, but between the two, just in your opinions, between Colorado and Dallas, who do you think is actually the better team after the trade deadline?
I have a lot of love for McKinnon and Makar. Like, they're amazing players, but I look at with the Rantanen trade to Dallas and how stacked that team is. Their second or their third line could play probably against any team's second or even first line and hold up against them, right?
Yeah.
I got to give a little more credence and kudos to Dallas. I think they're going to be a really tough team in the playoffs.
I tell you, the Leafs going into Denver the other night, I think it was a back-to-back, the second night of a back-to-back, into the Mile High City with the altitude. It felt like they were playing against 12 Nathan McKinnons, man.
Yeah.
Like, Colorado is quick. They are big. They have pretty much every tool, and they added, right? But I will agree with you, Paul. I think Dallas has more experience as far as playoffs and what they're going to, what's needed in the playoffs than some of the Colorado players, and I just think that they have all the tools necessary. So I'm going to say Dallas has the edge over Colorado, but I don't think it's, if they play each other, I'm watching every single game.
I was just going to say, I really hope they get a chance to play each other. Oh. That'll be like must-watch TV for sure.
It's it's the equivalent of Tampa Bay versus Florida.
Yeah.
In the East, right? Yeah. I would say. The unfortunate thing about it, with the way the playoffs are set up, you are going to have at least two very, very good teams out in the first round.
Yeah.
Like, no matter what.
No matter what. Yeah.
Very true. Well, gentlemen, I think we should probably move on to our next topic just because of how much time we're into this one. Major League Baseball is quickly approaching, and we're into Spring League Baseball, aren't we?
Yeah, actually getting towards the end of it. The regular season starts next week.
Is that right? Where did the time go?
Yeah, so we're still into spring training. It's been actually, if we're looking at, obviously, because Canada has our only baseball team, the Toronto Blue Jays, it's actually been a really good spring training and preseason for them. They have the second highest, as of right now, today being Thursday, March the 13th, they have the second best preseason record right now.
Wow, really?
They're doing pretty good, and considering, like, we've talked kind of all year, but at least in terms of since we've been doing the podcast about the Jays' inability to make certain moves, and obviously the kind of the tumultuous season they had last year, it gives you some hope that maybe the upcoming season's going to be good with the way that they're playing this preseason. But again, the preseason's one side of the coin. The regular season's another side. So it's it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Well, one of their on-player better outfielders, and last year ended up being one of their better players statistically, Dalton Varsho, which I know you were pissed at at the start of the year. He was not hitting well and not playing well. He ended up having a pretty good season, but he wasn't expected to even play in spring training, and if it wasn't going to be until the end. And I think he's played 5 or 6 games. So, and he's looked good. He hit a 2-run homer today. So, I mean, some of those things that the Jays maybe weren't sure were going to pan out are doing so. I was watching, like, their top prospect right now, what is listed as Arjun Nimala, and he's a shortstop, which makes it also interesting because he's having a pretty good spring too. But so is Bo Bichette, which is what the Jays really needed, because he didn't play last year hardly. Bichette had a terrible year, and he's looked fantastic so far in spring training. So that's interesting too, because we all know kind of the contract situation with Bichette. Don't know how that's going to play out. Nimala is an up-and-coming. He's only 19, and he's now their best prospect. Often baseball players develop later.
When we last talked about baseball on the pod, we were talking a lot about contracts and stuff that they needed to sign, and one of whom was Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Did they end up signing him? What's the deal there?
No.
So is he playing for the Blue Jays?
So they signed him to a 1-year contract prior
Yeah.
to the start of spring training.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it was like almost, they avoided arbitration, but it's just a 1-year deal.
Right.
Yeah. The downside to that, right? Obviously, once you play a certain amount of games in baseball, you can become, a unrestricted free agent. Look at Juan Soto.
Right.
Juan Soto, obviously at 26 years old, is already, was a UFA, got signed by the Mets, even though the Jays, put their hand into the cookie jar and didn't pull anything out.
Right, of course.
Vladdy is said to have wanted up to $500 million on a 14-year extension.
I want that too.
And a lot of what was reported is that the Jays were willing to do that, but based upon deferrals, which would lower the value of the contract closer to like 400, 450. And Vladdy, I guess at some points during the negotiation, was willing to do deferrals, but he wanted to stay around that $500 million mark. Now, if we're looking at that in perspective, when Ohtani signed his $700 million contract, his deferrals equaled his value at about $460 million. So Vladdy is wanting more than technically Ohtani wanted in deferrals in making that contract work.
I'll be completely honest. None of that makes any sense to me. But I will take your word for it.
So what's frustrating me about the process is that what it sounds like, at least the rumor is right now, the difference between the Jays and Guerrero Jr. on like a per season dollar figure, they're separated by about $3.5 million. That's it. Sign this guy, dude.
Yeah.
Really.
Give him a blank effing check.
Yeah.
Seriously. He's the only player that you've had that's been a franchise player in 3 decades, and you've developed him. You've brought him up. He's played unbelievable for you. He's done everything you've asked of him. Maybe he's being a little demanding. Maybe he's earned that.
Yeah.
Give him his goddamn money.
It's funny because, when you think about players you should sign, and I go back to hockey for a second. I compare this to Brock Besser. He's a Canuck. Like he's bled blue and green. And that's what Guerrero's doing for the Blue Jays. He's bleeding Blue Jay. He's been a Blue Jay his whole career, and he loves it in Toronto. Like, let the guy stay and be a star for your team.
Now, I get the front office's restraint on things, where Vladdy had a MVP caliber season prior to last season. I believe it was in 2021 or 2022. He had an MVP caliber season. They had 2 really kind of down years where he was still productive, but nowhere near productive as he was during that season. Right. And then last year he started off slow, but picked it right up on the second half of the season. So obviously, if you're front office and you're looking at, say, like a Juan Soto contract where the guy's been every year, one of the best players in baseball, it's understandable why he would get the contract that he gets. And Vladdy being best friends, Abadji's looking at Juan, so he's like, well, I'm as productive as him, and so I deserve, money close to him. He's maybe done a little bit more than me. So you do look at both sides. There's probably restraints on the front office because they don't know whether Vladdy can be consistent or not. At the same time, he's the face of the franchise. Yeah. And, this team needs to stay competitive. If you're going to lose a guy like Bo Bichette, possibly, you're going to lose Vladdy. maybe you can pick somebody in the offseason, but you're
But you don't
rolling,
wanna
you're
be in
rolling
a-
the dice, right?
You don't want to be in a bidding war with some other team because
Exactly.
every time you seem to do that,
And that's part of the problem with this whole extension thing was that even Vladimir, through his translator, said, I only want to negotiate before the start of the season. After that, it's the end of the season. And so the idea behind it is that he's only given Blue Jays, obviously, the credence to sign to a contract after the season's over. All other 29 teams are in on bidding for him at that point.
yeah.
What's so frustrating is we all know that because the Jays did not sign number 27 to a long-term contract this offseason, in a contract year, he's now going to go out and hit 330, 42 home runs, 120 RBIs, OPS of 950.
And you'll have to pay him
and then you'll have to pay him $700 million.
Yeah, very true. That's how it goes, right? When you sit there and you go, no, that's too much money. That's too much money. We'll give you 1 year and see how it goes. And that's when he turns it on.
Yeah, check out the tariff that Vlad Jr. is going to put on.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, the failures of this front office, really. This front office has really not done great things to improve the team. Now, I'm saying that based upon, too, the preseason's been good. The acquisition of Jimenez has been really good in spring training so far for a guy that hit really well in Spencer Horwitz last year. Mm-hmm. He's making a lot of contact with his at-bats, and you're seeing that. You're seeing improvement on Alejandro Kirk, who's been hitting the ball hard during spring training. So, guys that like Jimenez who weren't really known for their hitting ability, and Kirk, who had kind of a down year compared to years prior. It's good to see that during spring training. You're hoping that they can carry that into the regular season.
I was feeling very, very poorly on Monday. The only benefit to staying home from work was I got to watch the Jays play the Astros.
Oh, yeah.
And 3 straight hits, I think it was like the 5th inning, 3 straight hits went to Jimenez at second. 2 of them were like unreal plays, and he got all 3 outs that inning just by him. Yeah, he looks really, really good. Yeah,
Cool.
Yeah, if we're looking at spring training here, right now, Baseball America has the Blue Jays ranked 19th right now in terms of their power rankings. So they're still not considering them great, but again, with them having the spring training preseason that they're having, obviously there's hope for improvement. I will at least go over the top 10 teams that they're expecting to be the best in baseball this year right now. So they have obviously the Dodgers with everyone that they sign as the number 1. Atlanta Braves at number 2. The Philadelphia Phillies at number 3. The New York Mets, obviously the Juan Soto signing, and Pete Alonso at number 4. New York Yankees at number 5. Baltimore Orioles, with how young a team they are, at number 6. The Arizona Diamondbacks, with obviously the improvements they've done over the last few years. Boston Red Sox made a huge improvement, obviously, with signing Bregman and some of their rookies that they have in their system. The Texas Rangers at number 9, and the Chicago Cubs at number 10.
the AL East has 3 teams in there.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Lord help us.
And Tampa's ahead of them in the.
It almost feels like the Blue Jays will always be ranked lower on those lists, even if they play well this year, because of their history, right? Because of how they've been the last few years.
And not only that, people forget them because we're up north, and that's not an exaggeration.
No, that's true too, for sure. Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, I think now's a good time as any to talk about our final segment, which of course is the entertainment section. We've got a lot of memories as children. I think specifically about myself waking up Saturday morning to watch those Saturday morning cartoons. And I'm sure you guys did the same thing. Maybe not Brandon, because he's so much younger than we are. They probably didn't have Saturday morning cartoons when he was a kid.
Jeez, man.
They had cartoons every day.
Are you kidding?
On the Cartoon Channel. But when I grew up as a child, we only got cartoons on Saturday mornings. That's the only time I got to watch cartoons. I would wake up, I would watch cartoons like the Ninja Turtles cartoon. I would watch, what else did I watch? I used to watch, Bugs Bunny. What else did I used to watch?
Transformers, Generation
Yeah, Transformers, like X-Men.
He-Man.
Yeah.
He-Man. Actually, I watched all of those.
I watched Hercules.
Man,
Did you watch
watch
Hercules?
your tongue.
Did you watch Hercules?
I don't recall that.
All right, I got you
that
there.
makes the world of difference. What about, let me throw one on you. What about, what's it called?
I don't know that one.
That one.
The square-faced Batman?
That animated series was actually not meant for kids. If you really watched that
really.
series, it was definitely meant for older people.
I mean, I remember being a kid, like I would get up literally like 4 a.m. just to watch cartoons on Saturdays. Sitting in the dark, watching TV, had my blanket wrapped around me, and I would watch all the shows. And I remember like the first one that came on was like George of the Jungle or something like that. I didn't like it, but I still watched it because it was a cartoon, and I wanted to watch all the cartoons on Saturday mornings.
It's funny. I mentioned shows that I watched when I was a kid, and one of the ones I mentioned, people were like, "What are you talking about?" There was a show on Disney. It was Adventures of the Gummy Bears, and people are like, "So there was a show about candy?" And I'm like, "No, it's not about the candy at all.
Yeah.
It's about bears that drink a magical juice that makes them bounce, and they fight goblins and gargoyles in the show."
I used to watch Care Bears growing up.
Gargoyles, man. That was a big one.
There's another one. There was another one I used to watch called My Pet Monster.
Yes, yeah.
There was another one, Care Bears, of course. Care Bears. We used to watch that. Man, do you remember there was like a New Kids on the Block cartoon?
I remember. I didn't actually watch it.
I watched it. My sister was a giant New Kids on the Block fan, and I was too as a kid. And I watched that cartoon as well. If there was a like Ghostbusters cartoon, same thing. I used to watch that as well.
Darkwing Duck.
Darkwing Duck. Yeah, that was part of Disney Afternoon, I think.
They also did Tailspin. Loved that series.
Yep, Tailspin, Darkwing Duck. I want to say there's like two others.
I have to give
Chippendales Rescue Rangers.
Chippendales. I have to give shout out to Goof Troop. That was one of my absolute favorite series.
So there's all sorts of amazing shows that I used to watch regularly. Probably Darkwing Duck was one of my favorites.
Absolutely.
And then like Ninja Turtles and
Reboot.
Reboot. I didn't even learn about Reboot until I moved to Nanaimo at 12. I think it's because it came on YTV, and I don't think I got YTV living in Ucluelet.
I believe Reboot came out in like 93 or 94.
Around 94 was when I moved to Nanaimo, so that would explain that. Yeah,
you talk about, again, the computer animated shows. One of my favorite shows, even to this day still, is the Transformers Beast Wars series. I loved that series. My son, he wants to watch it every night before he goes to bed because he's gotten right into it. He loves all the characters. He calls the show Dinobots. He doesn't call it Beast Wars. But
it must make you proud, though, like him watching a show that you used to watch.
Absolutely.
Well, what's interesting is that later, a couple of years after, it rebranded to Beasties.
That's right.
You remember that?
I remember that.
And I had...
Sorry, that made me laugh because I felt it sounded inappropriate for a second.
And then I had all the action figures that transformed from their animal and back. Like, I loved that show myself as well.
So good. And they did have a sequel series to it called Beast Machines, which the animation style had changed up quite a bit. I was still, I believe, Mainframe Productions, that same company that did Reboot, also did Beast Wars.
They were out of Vancouver, weren't they?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. I know Reboot was created in Vancouver for sure.
And it was just as good. And it was actually a nice way to finish up that series too, in regards to how they ended it. I'm not going to give spoilers, so I'm not going to say anything. But what happened in the Beast Wars almost got kind of negated in that series, but it did a nice job to tie everything up.
I heard a rumor that they were talking about rebooting Reboot.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I wouldn't mind that. I know they did kind of a reboot series a few years ago, but it was with live action actors that were going into the computer, and it was awful.
Kind of like Tron style, like
much worse. Much worse. It was definitely like B movie rated.
So I mean, obviously we get a little older. We slowly sort of move away from cartoons as we become teenagers. Is there a specific show that kind of stuck out to you as teenagers?
Well, how about this? Before we do that, real quick, what about like more adultish cartoons?
Okay, give me an example.
Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah. I love
South
Beavis
Park.
Ren and Stimpy.
Ren and Stimpy was the one I was going to say.
Yeah.
Family Guy.
Yeah.
King of the Hill.
Yeah.
Family Guy came out when I was an adult, but
I suppose.
That's true.
But I did watch it. I did watch King of the Hill. I mean, I grew up watching The Simpsons. I mean, that's obviously that
goes along that line.
That show came out in like 1989.
Yeah.
So when you think about like one of the longest running shows out there, The Simpsons is it. And I used to watch it regularly. I loved that show. I used to have like a Bart Simpson wallet.
My favorite, I think of The Simpsons, one of my favorite episodes is when Lisa becomes a vegetarian. Yeah. And she takes a tractor and starts pushing the roast pig that Homer's trying to cook. And
is that the same, the pig flying, right?
Yeah, that's where she pushes it. It goes down a hill, and then Bart and Homer chasing after. He's like, and it goes into a bush. It's like, it's just a little dirty. It's just a little dirty. It's still good. It's still good.
Yeah.
And then
it's just shot, a little airborne. It's still good. It's still good.
The water pipe.
I love that.
Oh man, that was great.
That show is probably one of the most quotable shows out there.
Yeah.
There's probably some equivalent, like South Park, Family Guy, probably equivalent in a lot of ways, but because of the longevity of The Simpsons, I feel like it's got to be more quotable than those ones.
Comparable to that show, did you guys ever see a show called Dinosaurs?
Yeah, I love that show.
That's so
Not
good.
the mama.
Did you ever see that, Brandon?
Oh, like
live action.
Yeah.
And it was
puppets.
The characters were like The Simpsons.
Yeah.
A little baby with a yellow shirt as I'm wearing a yellow. Is that why you thought of it?
Yeah.
Some little fat guy in a yellow shirt. Thanks a lot, Paul.
That was a great show. I loved that show. I used to watch it regularly. Absolutely. And I think, kind of leading up to that, I mean, that, you also include, say, the Friday afternoon or the Friday evening shows that we used to watch too growing up. I believe it was called TGIF.
Yep. Yeah,
TGIF. So you had Full House, you had Step by Step, Family Matters,
Saved by the Bell.
Saved by the Bell. Saved by the Bell wasn't part of that. It was I think Saturdays was Saved by the Bell. I think.
Saved by the Bell. Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, we grew up watching Saved by the Bell as well. Crazy.
Hanging with Mr. Cooper.
Yeah, Hanging with Mr. Cooper.
I don't know that one.
I do. Mark Cooper was the name of the guy. I mean, obviously, I stuck with it because my last name's Cooper, but. Yeah, like there were some awesome shows. Boy Meets World.
Caroline in the City.
Yeah. Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Yep.
Yeah, see, I remember that being on TGIF, but I never watched that one. Never watched Sabrina.
Yeah.
What about like Power Rangers?
Yeah.
Was that too old for you
guys?
For
me, it's a little bit too old, but there was kids that I babysat growing up who watched Power Rangers religiously.
See, that was my wheelhouse.
So,
Power Rangers was a big thing for me. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're still kind of going to the Friday, even looking at the Thursdays, right? Friends was always on Thursdays, and that was a huge show for a lot of people, including myself. My brother and I mimic Chandler Bing all the time and his quotes.
There were shows that I grew up with that were adult shows. We would watch every day. I mean, if there's American listeners, they're not going to understand this. Some will, but some won't. Most won't. We used to watch Degrassi growing up, and I would watch it. For me, we would watch it, and then once Degrassi was over, it was bedtime. That's how I knew it was bedtime, when Degrassi ended. When the credits are rolling, then you know it's bedtime. So for us, Degrassi was a big one.
How about a mini this or that? Like one question.
Okay.
Home Improvement or Fresh Prince?
Home Improvement.
They're both on my list.
I loved them both. I loved them both, but Home Improvement was a big winner for me.
It's close for me. I might go just with Fresh Prince because I think I watched Fresh Prince more than I watched Home Improvement. I loved Home Improvement. Yeah. Tim Allen and his, the
grunts.
Obviously quotable, obviously memorable, and it was more of a family dynamic because there was younger kids in it. Then you look at Fresh Prince; they're kind of teenagers and they're older. But I just found Fresh Prince a little more relatable because it's teenage years, and for the fact that. Will Smith was just iconic in his role.
Not to go off on a tangent, but the reason why Faye and I are still together is because of Home Improvement. And it's a long story, but ultimately on our very first date, we were walking through a store. I'm not going to say the name of the store, but it was a furniture style store. Kind of sounds Swedish. And we were walking through and we saw a sign that said Noel. And I pointed at it and I laughed and I said, haha, Leon. And she knew exactly what I was talking about from an episode of Home Improvement. And we both laughed hysterically. And to this day, we talk about it every Christmas. So it's because of Home Improvement that I'm still with my wife.
I love that. I love that.
That's awesome.
Little things like that, right? I mean, and it sticks with you. And that show has so many subtle comedy moments that I loved growing up.
So, were you guys ever like Seinfeld, Frasier, Everybody Loves Raymond type fans? Like those were always popular, but I never watched any of those.
I never watched Everybody Loves Raymond. I didn't watch Seinfeld until I became an adult.
Me too.
Until I was out of the house because my dad hated it. So it was like he refused to let it on the TV. But I love Seinfeld. It's one of my favorite shows now. I literally watch it every night to go to sleep. It's on my TV in the bedroom, and I fall asleep to it.
Good for you. That's awesome.
I freaking love that show. But my mom watched Frasier. I got why it was funny. It just wasn't my thing. Every once in a while, it'll be on TV. And let's say I'm not paying attention to the TV, and it'll be on, and like a scene will happen, and I might giggle or something like that. But it's not to me like what Seinfeld is or what like Friends was or anything like that.
I always loved Niles and Kelsey's. banter that they had on the show. So I was definitely into Fraser. I never actually really watched any Everybody Loves Raymond. I think I saw maybe 2 episodes of when the series was on. And then same with Seinfeld. I got into it when I was older. I didn't quite understand it when I was in my teenage years, so I didn't really enjoy the comedy. But after, obviously having lived life a little bit, and you kind of understand why they're making the jokes that they do, I came to love Seinfeld as I got older.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Bean.
Love Mr. Bean.
Love Mr. Bean. You can't go wrong.
I was introduced to Mr. Bean in high school drama class and loved it from day one. Just so funny. Rowan Atkinson is probably one of the most brilliant physical actors there is in terms of physical comedy. Absolutely brilliant. And he's funny even in regular comedy. Like if you've seen the movies that he does, Johnny English, it's kind of a play on James Bond or whatever, or Maxwell Smart or whatever. Just super funny. He's a great actor.
I think we can all agree, like as we got older and towards the turn of the millennium, shows like Survivor and Fear Factor were ones that were quite fun to watch. And certainly because you're thinking, well, maybe I can take part in that and I'll do well. But it kind of got the whole reality TV kind of show thing going when you watch those. I don't know. Those were 2 that I really enjoyed.
There's only one reality show that I ever watch. Can you guess what it is?
I know what it is.
I know you know what it is because we've talked about it.
I don't know. Big Brother?
Big Brother. It's the only one.
Actually, that wasn't the one I thought.
Oh, what did you think?
I thought it was Alone.
Oh, I don't consider that. I mean, it is a reality show, but I don't consider that the same spectrum.
Fair enough.
Like the contest. Like I know it's still a contest, but I don't consider it the same spectrum.
Sure.
To me, I think of Alone kind of like Survivor Man. I love Survivor Man as well. For me, it's almost like teaching me survival skills. That's what I watch it for. It's intriguing. For me, Alone is the best part of Alone is watching how they build their structures and their shelters and stuff. It's exciting.
I was just going to say, I was thinking kind of, do you guys want to move into something that's a little more current for what we like? Yeah. If you do, I just want to ask a quick question about, say, like the 90s or something like stuff we grew up with. Is there like if you could pick one, let's say like a family series and then like say a comedy series, what would be your favorite for each?
From the 90s?
I mean 90s, but like more so just your growing up era, like into your teenage years. I would say before the year 2000 specifically.
I specifically, sorry to cut you off if you were about to say something. I specifically remember watching Step by Step as a young teenager. I would say probably 13. And the girl who played the young teenage daughter, for the life of me, I can't remember the actress's name. Christine Lakin or something like that. Very, very close in age with me. And she was slowly becoming a teenager too. And I developed a crush on her, like while watching the show. For me, I just remember kind of seeing her in a different light from one episode to the next, where I was just like, whoa, she's actually kind of cute. And like my mentality changed of the show almost. And to me, that sticks with me. So like, I'd say that's family show. That's probably the one. What about you, Paul, for family show?
It's probably not necessarily considered family, but we watched it as a family just because it brings out the nerd side. We used to watch Star Trek Next Generation, and Star Trek Voyager. We did it as a family all the time. So
what's wrong with that pick, man?
We really got into that.
I thought you were going to go in another direction, so that's good. I'll take that.
So that was definitely family time for us, and certainly impact in terms of comedy and just show that I will love for eternity. Friends just had that impact, like I said, every one of the actors for comedy side. Every one of the characters had some sort of mannerism or catchy line or just ability to act with their character that was just golden to watch. Like you expect Friends to act like that, but again, they brought out the comedy chops to go with it. It was good.
It's funny because I haven't mentioned my comedy one yet, but it's funny you mentioned watching a show as a family together, like you watched Star Trek together as a family. For me, I watched another show for comedy as a family. We all watched it together, but it's the most inappropriate show for kids to watch, and that was Married with Children. Absolutely loved that show. Al Bundy, the most funny character. And it's so satirical that like you can't sit there and be like mad for watching that show because it's literally like so ridiculous, but it's so funny and the characters are great and obviously the actors are amazing. So
no pig.
Just a great show.
And an actress from the greatest TV show ever created was in that show. I would say
do tell.
Katie Sagal.
Katie Sagal.
Yeah,
Sons of Anarchy.
Sons of Anarchy. Yeah,
Sons of Anarchy. I
that's
knew you were going that route.
Million and
I was
50, 100,000 billion%.
I was going to
TV
joke
show
and say Futurama, but
family show for me is Full House. Mm-hmm. I can still watch that to this day, and you guys listening can laugh if you want. I don't really care.
I can still watch it too.
That show just had such an impact on my life. I think it was the exact same stage that I was in my life was the exact same stage that basically the kids were in their lives in the show. And then just, the whole thing was just phenomenal for me. It included music. Music was such a big part of that show, which was cool. And just, that one hit home for me.
Jesse and the Rippers.
Yeah. And I would say comedy. I would say Friends now, but I didn't watch Friends until later.
Yeah.
So I would say, let me rephrase. If I was picking a comedy from the 90s and I was picking it now, I'd probably go with Friends. But if I really think back to a show that I liked when I was a teenager growing up, that was my favorite is King of Queens.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that show.
I still love that show. I keep telling Faye, I was like, I wish there was an all King of Queens channel that you could just watch nothing but the King of Queens. It's such a good show.
What I find cool about that show when I think back to it the most is that it did so much with like a very small amount of characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But specifically the way that the way that Kevin James portrays his character, and he has these little kind of like tics that he does, like like just the little things he does. That it's so funny because it's like the most random times that he does it, and it's so like complete opposite of what Carrie's trying to do. I love it. I love the show.
He seems to always be happy, and she seems to always be miserable.
Yeah, and yet they're the perfect couple.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, if you had to say rank the top 5 shows you've seen as an adult now, at least in the last, let's say, 20 years, in our case, since we've been adults, obviously 15 or so for yours. I started to really do my adult viewing when 24 came out with Kiefer Sutherland. Now, that's not in my top 5, but nonetheless, that's kind of where I started doing adult viewing shows. If I was doing mine, it would be How I Met Your Mother, Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Yellowstone, and I could say the Marvel shows, but I want to keep it within the 5, so it would stop at Yellowstone.
My goodness. I don't know, man. That's a lot. How I Met Your Mother's great. I absolutely love that show too. I think when it comes to comedy, it's really easy to win me over. Yeah. Because I love them all. We grew up watching Roseanne. Like for me, in terms of like classic comedy, Married with Children is probably up there. And then like Game of Thrones, The Last of Us season 1 was incredible. I cannot wait for season 2. I can't think of any more, but I'm sure there's. It's just because I'm on the spot here, but I can't think of any more. But there's probably all sorts of different shows that I would put up there.
If I rank my top 5, I would say Sons of Anarchy is 1. Number 2 is House, MD. Nice. Number 3, probably Yellowstone. 4, Breaking Bad. And 5...
Oh. I have another one.
You go ahead, because I'm not sure I know the last one.
I just thought of one that I've just started getting into recently that I actually really... It seems like as it gets more and more into seasons, it's getting better and better. And that's Reacher with Alan Ritchson.
I've heard
it's quite good. This specific season 3, has been really good.
I have 5A, 5B, and 5C. And the reason I'm going to list all 3 is because I love all of the shows, but I literally have not seen the end of any of the seasons of them.
Oh, wow.
So the first one is The Walking Dead.
Nice. Yeah.
Haven't seen the end of that. Game of Thrones, I actually haven't seen the final season.
Okay.
And
are you boycotting it? Is that the point?
No, okay. I just didn't have the means, and then
fair enough.
Don't have the time.
I've heard House of Dragons is really good.
It is really good.
Faye has watched it, and she keeps telling me to watch it. I just haven't had a time to sit down and watch it.
I put it on par, even above Game of Thrones, at least because Game of Thrones kind of tailed off, unfortunately, at the end.
Right.
House of Dragons had such a strong start to it.
I think I'm in the minority when it comes to Game of Thrones because I really liked the last couple of episodes. I can see why people would be frustrated, especially fans who were like right with it through thick and thin. But I thought it was great.
Just felt rushed at the end.
Yeah, fair enough. I can see that too.
Yeah.
And I would say my last one, which kind of sucks because the only reason we're not finishing it is because Tiff knows some spoilers about farther on.
Oh.
But I'm gonna say Grey's Anatomy.
Okay.
Like it's House is kind of the more serious medical show. Grey's is serious at times, but it's still kind of got that soap opera feel to it.
Yeah.
And I think out of the 480 seasons that there are, I think we were only on like 9.
Did you watch ER?
No, never watched it.
Okay, you should give ER a shot. I watched ER with Faye, and she raved about it. And then when she watched it again with me, even better for her. So it was really good. It's a really well written show. And apparently Noah Wiley's in a new show. I think it's on I want to say Crave or something like that. It's sort of like an R-rated version of ER, and really good too. So
what's that called?
Starts with a P. The Pit, I think.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
I have heard of
PITT.
that. Okay.
Yeah, and Faye again tells me it's incredible. She's got all the time in the world to sit down and watch all these shows, and I'm like, how do you find the time? But of course, she works graveyards in her job, and sometimes when it's dead, she gets to watch stuff while she's at work.
Fair
So
enough.
Always
I
serious.
probably shouldn't have said that on a podcast. But
Also serious if you haven't seen. Have you seen Dexter?
yeah.
Honestly, I started watching it. I think I watched 2 or 3 episodes and I couldn't do it. Suits was the same.
Yeah.
I may give them another shot, but it didn't pull me in right away like some of those other series did. And that's maybe my fault for not giving it the full opportunity. I'm not saying I won't, but so far I haven't.
what am I doing? Fargo.
Yeah, one of your favorites.
Fargo.
One of your favorites.
Yeah. It's why I didn't think of it, because they go like 2 years before they bring out new seasons,
Yeah,
and it's so
that's true.
frustrating.
Good thing with Dexter, if you do happen to get into it, it does take a bit of time to get into that series because there is a lot of character development at the beginning, but the major climax events that happen in each and every one of the seasons are worth the watch. And some of the continuation series have been pretty good too. There was Dexter New Blood was another one that came out. And just recently this year, they did a prequel series to Dexter for when he's young, which carried the essence of the first series very well.
Yeah. I know that Devin harps on me all the time because I haven't watched Suits, and I love lawyer, legal, thriller type
do,
movies.
yeah, that's right.
But why haven't you watched Suits yet? I don't know, man.
It's tough. If you don't feel motivated to watch it, it's really hard to get yourself to sit down and actually do it, right? Like, and it's tough. Like, I can understand that. There's so many great shows that we've watched, and there's so many to watch still too. So, obviously we've got more watching to do. We'll have to do this specific section of our podcast again in the future, and maybe talk more about shows that we haven't already talked about. Brando, you wanted to say one more thing about maybe Mitch Marner before we move on.
I kind of wanted to make a point and just get your guys' opinion on it. It feels maybe moot now, but something that I was listening to earlier this week and helped me kind of form my own opinion on it, and it's bothering me. And it's the fact that since they were drafted, you guys know how much I harp on William Nylander.
Yeah.
I haven't liked that pick since he was drafted. The guy's got all the talent in the world, but for me, I don't like him as a player. Mitch Marner, I've coddled him like a baby since he was drafted, since before he was drafted. I watched him when he was with the London Knights like a season before he was drafted. I've always loved this player, and I love what he's brought to the Leafs. And what is frustrating me is that he played hardball on his first long-term extension. And the Leafs ended up signing him, which was great, and he's performed. You cannot take anything away from his performance other than the fact that he seems to disappear a bit in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Yes, that is true. That is a fact. But at both ends of the ice, this is one of the top wingers in the National Hockey League over the past 7 or 8 seasons. So on trade deadline day, now this is speculation and rumors. I don't think it's officially been reported.
Yeah.
But there was an offer on the table for the Leafs to pick up Rantanen from Carolina, and they wanted Mitch Marner in that deal. The Leafs approached Marner, asked him to waive his no movement clause. He said, no guy. So that nixed that trade. No problem. He's earned that right. He signed that contract. He gets to decide where he wants to go.
Thanks, Dubas.
What's that?
Thanks, Dubas.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. I don't even have a problem with that. That's not even where I'm going with this yet. Of
course.
But Here's the thing. It's rumored that, obviously, with the Leafs trying to trade for Mikko Rantanen, they would have had to have a contract extension in place.
Totally.
And to me, what I've heard is that they have offered Mitch Marner more on a contract than what they offered Mikko Rantanen, which he was going to be willing to sign if they were to make that trade happen. So there's one bee in my bonnet. So what's going on with that? Like, sorry, bud. I love you, Mitch, but you are not as good a player as Austin Matthews. Mm-hmm. You cannot make Austin Matthews money, in my opinion. So this year, Austin Matthews is the highest paid player in the NHL. He's not having a very good year, but he's proven over the past 7 or 8 seasons that he is and does deserve that money. Mitch Marner isn't that guy. Mitch Marner does not put the team on his back. Mitch Marner doesn't put goals up in the most important times, at least so far in his career. Matthews has been a bit better of a playoff performer, not much, but a bit better than Mitch Marner. So here's my thing. Mitch Marner has the capability right now to probably become, alongside Matthews, potentially, the best Leafs ever. At least right now, as it goes. He has a statue built on Legends Row. They just haven't revealed it yet. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, what's going to happen if we get to the end of this season, no cup, maybe even a first-round exit again? Ideally not, but maybe. Marner walks in free agency. Does that not now make him the most hated player in Toronto Maple Leafs history? You've refused to waive your no trade. You don't sign a contract extension. Your team cannot recoup assets. You do nothing in the playoffs, and then you go sign with another team.
Yeah, he'll get booed for sure.
He will be in such a crap storm.
The John Tavares treatment.
I was just going to say, who does that remind you of?
Exactly, 100%. Yeah. Worse.
Yeah.
It's going to be worse.
I just mean in terms of like how they treated him when he came back to the barn.
So,
it would be the same response.
I'd like to hear your guys' opinions on it, but before we do that, I just want to say, Mitchie, buddy, come home. Like, just get it done. You are going to, seriously, you're about to become a dad, and your kid is going to grow up with their dad being the most hated player in the NHL from, sorry to tell you, but the center of the hockey universe.
You say in the NHL, but you mean in Toronto specifically.
No, I mean the NHL, because no player, because the Toronto is the NHL, Joe. You know that.
Oh, yes, fair enough. Sorry, I forgot. I agree. I agree with you. I think that would be really a really difficult kind of thing to put the team through. Part of me wonders if maybe if they can't come down to a contract, if they work something out and just do like a minor deal just for a year to figure stuff out and kind of go from there.
He won't do that. Not a chance.
His value is never going to be higher than it is right now.
Yeah,
he'll sign in San Jose for $15 million a year.
That's true.
He's coming into his prime, right? So it's one of those things where my perspective on him is he's already started to become a villain even before the season started. With the fact that he wasn't willing to do an extension in the offseason. He's having a great year. He's top 5 in the league in terms of scoring. So like he's got a lot of value. Certainly, I'd be angry with him leaving, but I'm also expecting it too, and prepared for him to leave for the fact that, if he wants more money than Matthews, just like you said, he's not worth more than Matthews at this point. Matthews took a discount. If you think you're so good that you deserve absolute market value, even though you're in a team in a city that loves you, a team that loves you, you're garnered as one of the best players in the world playing on this team in the hockey center of the universe.
I love that the Leaf fans are admitting it now, finally, by the way.
Why wouldn't you want to do the same way that like Brendan Shanahan and other players did with certain teams like the Red Wings and stuff like that, where they took slightly dialed back salaries to have a perennial winner?
Look at
why
Sidney
wouldn't you
Crosby.
try to? Exactly. Why wouldn't you try to do the same thing? You're making millions of dollars. You're making $10.9 million. You're making more than like 80% of the other players in the league right now, 85%.
That are just as good.
Yeah, and you're going to maybe take a pay raise, and he deserves a pay raise, I'd say. Maybe up to 11.5, 12 is what I'd see at. Like at the Rantanen deal, I'm actually fine with that.
Yeah. What's Matthews making?
13.25.
Right. Yeah, he definitely doesn't deserve more than what he's making.
So you're making millions. Is $1 million or $2 million going to make much of a difference when you can get all of the endorsements, ads, everything else that you come with being a Leafs player, compared to if you go somewhere else where you might not get that and you actually might be getting less money over the long term outside of your hockey contract?
Do you think Oreo in San Jose is going to give you a $10 million commercial? No. But in Toronto, you're going to get Oreo. You're going to get Dairyland. You're going to get Chips Ahoy. You're going to get whatever you want. Dr. Ecker and frozen pizza. Like,
I don't know if those are what's keeping him or not keeping him. But
Paul's exactly right, though. There is no
saying.
market in the league that is going to offer you more on incentives and endorsements than the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm sorry.
Part of me wonders, so like, I compared a lot to what Vancouver's going through with Brock Besser, right? So Brock Besser, of course, being on the last year of his contract, the teams are far apart in a contract, and you might think it's money, but it's actually not money, it's term. He wants an 8-year deal. Vancouver doesn't want him for 8 years because they don't necessarily know that he's going to have the abilities in 8 years. He's 28 or 29 right now. They don't know that he's going to have the same abilities that he has now in those, at the end of that contract. They don't want to trap themselves into a contract for like 2 years where he might be incapable, and then they've got to suffer through it because they've given him a no move clause or whatever, right? So that's the sort of difference between the two. But at the same time, it's almost like the opposite side of things, where Vancouver fans would be sad if he walked, rather than Leaf fans. I know you're saying you'd be sad if Marner walked, but if you would also be angry if he did this to the team, whereas Brock Besser's kind of getting the shit treatment, the crap treatment from the team, where they're not giving him any information and they're not giving him even, they're not wiggling at all to help him get what he wants.
I look at it as if he does choose to leave, and if Marner, talking about Marner, if he does choose to leave and go to obviously another market, I think that kind of actually helps the Leafs in some ways, because the salary that he's wanting can be split up in the aggregate to other players. Again, I'll push Sam Bennett again. He is a Berube player. He's a heart and soul player. He'll never give up on a play. He's a 2A forward. You could get him, let's say, possibly for 8.5. I'm not certain what Bennett's could be looking for in his next deal, but if you went after him, maybe go after Brock Besser as well. 8.5 to him as well, or 8. You're close to what Marner's wanting in terms of term and value. Get those two instead of Marner.
8, 10, 7.
No question about that. My only concern with that is that, one, I'm greedy and you don't recoup any assets by just letting him walk.
But you're pulling into assets too, right? If you do something like that.
Yes, but the downside is that if Marner leaves, there is no guarantee you're going to be able to sign free agents.
Absolutely.
There's going to be 31 teams that want to sign those guys.
That's right.
The guarantee
Whereas
difference, yeah.
if you sign Marner, you're guaranteed to have that player, right? That's where I kind of go, man, just do it, because you are going to flip the switch and it's going to happen instantly.
Yeah. We're going to have a few podcasts to discuss this, I think, as the season goes on. And of course, when the off season happens, when we do our live stream, which I'm excited for, probably we're thinking draft day is probably our next live stream.
Yeah,
that's a great. I love draft day.
I'm looking forward to that. I think that'll be a lot of fun. And there's always lots of trades during the draft, whether it's for draft picks or for players in general. Sometimes you get some surprises. I remember in 2019 when New Jersey traded for PK Subban out of left field. Nobody saw that coming, and it was a big trade for that time. So, and then of course Vancouver trading for JT Miller that same draft. Yeah. So definitely things happen that you don't see coming. So it's exciting, and I look forward to it. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for another exciting episode. We had a lot to talk about this one. How do you guys feel?
Great. Glad to do it, and I'm glad the trade deadline's over.
I am too. I am glad that the trade deadline's over, because we're that much closer to playoff hockey, which is very exciting. Yeah. And we're going to be doing we're going to be doing video podcasts fairly soon, and when that happens, people will be able to see our reaction as we're watching games and recording podcasts at the same time. So it should be exciting stuff. Once again, for the Puckn Pod, my name is Joe.
My name is Brandon.
And I'm Paul.
We'll see you guys in the next one.